Hello everyone, I'm Carlotta Arthur, Director of the Clare Luce Program for Women in STEM at the Henry Luce Foundation in the United States. The Clare Luce Program is the largest private funder of women's STEM higher education in the U.S., having awarded over $200 million in support of more than 2,700 women. My topic today is crossing disciplinary boundaries and researcher training to address large-scale, real-world problems. As someone who has an engineering degree and a psychology degree, I know a bit about the promises and challenges of crossing disciplinary boundaries to address problems. Why is this an important topic? It's important because our most pressing problems cut across disciplinary boundaries. The world's greatest challenges simply are not neatly organized by discipline. For example, anyone who looks at the Sustainable Development Goals, choose any one, will see this very clearly. Real-world problems require us to step outside of an individual discipline and cross traditional, largely academically defined disciplinary boundaries. For example, if we look at SDG number 3, good health and well-being, certainly the field of medicine has a role to play, but so do a whole host of other disciplines: nursing, nutrition, epidemiology, public health, psychology, social work. Many of those disciplines you may think of immediately. However, education and economics, disciplines that you may not think of immediately, also have a role to play in the good health and well-being of a population. An example of a large-scale, real-world problem the world is grappling with right now is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. As we speak, vaccinologists, virologists, physicians, nurses, epidemiologists, public health professionals, psychologists, and other health professionals are working together to find vaccines and treatments for the virus and for its physical and psychological impact, while government leaders, educators, businesses, faith leaders, housing organizations, economists, etc., are all working together to address the challenges of life during a pandemic. Likewise with SDG number 5, gender equality, a topic that is of particular importance to my philanthropic program as well as to this summit. Addressing gender equity requires many people from many disciplines working together. One of the most promising ways that individuals from multiple disciplines have chosen to work together is through interdisciplinary research. Here's one definition of interdisciplinary research that I think is very good. Interdisciplinary research is a mode of research by teams or individuals that integrates information, data, techniques, tools, perspectives, concepts, and/or theories from two or more disciplines or bodies of specialized knowledge to advance fundamental understanding or to solve problems whose solutions are beyond the scope of a single discipline or area of research practice. Integration is key in interdisciplinary research. It's not just a team of people from different backgrounds who all look at a problem with different approaches and ways of doing research based on their discipline. Instead, the team is actually integrating information, techniques, theories, and more in their approach to the problem. So to recap, interdisciplinary research is driven by the vision that integrating all of these components of research, by doing this, we'll have the means to address complex questions and the ability to solve societal problems while also using the power of our new technologies. Interdisciplinary research may also provide us with an opportunity to embrace diversity and inclusion. For example, women are underrepresented in computer science in the U.S., but much better represented in the life sciences. Interdisciplinary work involving both computer science and life sciences is an opportunity to break down some of those disciplinary barriers. Indeed, with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, you may have heard that vaccinologist Dr. Sarah Gilbert leads the University of Oxford's team that developed one of the most promising COVID-19 vaccine candidates. Imagine the loss to society if women were still systematically excluded from the sciences. Students are another driver. Many are ready, willing, and eager to do this work. So what's stopping us from doing interdisciplinary research? Perhaps one of the biggest challenges to interdisciplinary research is traditional research culture in academia. The man in the cartoon says, "I'm on the verge of a major breakthrough, but I'm also at that point where chemistry leaves off and physics begins, so I'll have to drop the whole thing." While we would like to believe that we're beyond this point, the fact is that many, if not most, higher education systems and structures are set up to primarily support single disciplinary or siloed approaches and perspectives. Many faculty members are trained to be, and are rewarded for, becoming extremely expert in a very narrow aspect of a specific discipline. To be fair, that kind of work is really important to most institutions, and no one is suggesting that it be abandoned. Basic science research, for example, is really important. However, just as I shared, there are many problems that can't be addressed with this approach. A challenge is that researchers in many different disciplines may often have very different worldviews or perspectives on how research should be done. Research approaches and methods will often differ significantly. For example, quantitative research is held in very high esteem in lab-based sciences, whereas qualitative research may be important for researchers doing work in communities. Communications can be a challenge. Terminology differs, and even the way that information is shared can present challenges. Further, there may be issues of professional respect and trust, wherein the individuals don't value research outside of their own discipline. For example, I once had a supervisor on a clinical internship who was a physician who told me and the other clinical psychology interns, all of whom did really outstanding convergent research at the intersection of multiple disciplines, that until he met us, he thought that all psychologists did was hold hands and sing songs with people. I'm pleased that supervisor was a quick learner, but professional respect is an important factor, a factor that can also intersect with gender. So if we could get the scientists themselves to shift their perspectives and attitudes to be open to working interdisciplinarily, we'd be all set, correct? Well, actually, there's still a problem. We still need to address institutional systems and structures. Many institutions simply are not structured to support or reward interdisciplinary research. For example, if someone in the chemistry department wants to partner with someone in the engineering department on an interdisciplinary project, they might have trouble getting that research taken seriously and or getting it funded internally. Interdisciplinary research may take longer, it may be more difficult to get published, which could mean that a faculty member doing interdisciplinary research may not be as traditionally productive as they would be if they just stuck to their single discipline. This can have implications for tenure and promotion in institutions unless the institution shifts its internal policies and procedures to appropriately value interdisciplinary research. There's also the issue of how to do interdisciplinary faculty research. Most faculty members were probably not trained to do research outside of a single discipline, or trained to partner with individuals in other areas in a way that integrates the disciplines. So this kind of work can take time to get up and running. Schools might try hiring faculty who are already interdisciplinary. This is increasingly common, but even this requires schools to look carefully at their policies and practices, including for hiring, and ensure that they don't favor single disciplinary faculty members only. A memorandum of understanding that details everyone's expectations for interdisciplinary faculty members can help ensure that everyone at the institution is on the same page. Connecting silos and crossing disciplinary boundaries is starting to sound really difficult, but we do have models for this. For example, national laboratories in the US and many other countries are organized not by specific discipline area, but by an area of interest. For example, energy, such as Argonne National Laboratory and Oak Ridge National Laboratory in the US. Also, we have models in industry. Industrial research and development is typically interdisciplinary. Academic institutions that have industry partnerships should take time to learn and better understand how industry has broken down its disciplinary barriers. While these models don't translate exactly, there are lessons that can be learned and taken from them. Traditional partners to academic institutions also have a role to play. For example, funding agencies can provide financial support for early interdisciplinary efforts, perhaps helping to mitigate some of the risk that institutions undertake when they make the shift to interdisciplinary research. Funders can also signal support for interdisciplinary research by creating special funding streams. Funders can share information about best practices on interdisciplinary research from their experiences working with institutions across the nation and globally. Funders can also provide a platform to discuss important issues, including those focused on interdisciplinary topics. For example, at the Luce Foundation, we were concerned about ethics in STEM and launched a blog series in which we highlighted the work of some of our grantees, in which they shared how they were integrating ethics, for example, from philosophy into their STEM education. Further, funders can also address cross-cutting issues, such as diversity and inclusion in academic institutions, again sharing best practices. For example, the Luce Foundation funded the U.S. National Academy of Sciences study on sexual harassment in STEM, along with other funders. This was a critical cross-sectoral issue that needed to be tackled in the U.S. There's also a role for professional societies. Professional societies are in a perfect position to provide trainings on how to do interdisciplinary work, to facilitate introductions between scientists from different disciplinary backgrounds, and to launch special initiatives. Professional societies are often also the publishers of professional journals. They can lead the way in this area in terms of accepting interdisciplinary research papers for publication, or even creating new journals specifically for such research. Over the past few minutes, I've shared with you some tips on how your institution can begin to do interdisciplinary work. It's not an easy thing to transition to, but I hope that this information has been helpful. Here on this slide, I summarize some key recommendations that you might find useful. On this slide, I've included a list of resources that you might find helpful, information that might be useful as you're thinking about addressing the issue of interdisciplinarity on your campus. Also, I've included links to several publications that are freely available online that address some of these issues from the National Academy of Sciences in the U.S. Finally, if you'd like more information about the Clare Boothe Luce program that I direct at the Henry Luce Foundation, here's where you can find information. Also, I'd like to thank my Clare Boothe Luce program assistant, Sarah DiMartazzi, for her contribution to this presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention.